Ascendai, The Destiny Crest. Audiobook by Robinson and Walsh. Chapter 9. Full Moon. Colt ran swiftly through the snow-laden forest. His heart was in his throat as he searched frantically for his friend. He felt that he could track Samson through the connection they shared, but he didn't understand why the wolf had crashed from the cabin so abruptly. Through his months of living on the mountain, he had learned to navigate quickly over the dangerous terrain. The full moon hung low in the sky and lit the forest. The light reflected off the snow, and everything around him glowed silver. He had run nearly a mile before he felt the awful emptiness inside him begin to ease. Colt knew that he was getting close to the huge wolf. His breath misted around his face in a cloud of white vapor as he caught a glimpse of Samson through the trees and slowed his reckless rush to a walk. Samson sat majestically on a small rise in front of a large cliff. The white of his fur was enhanced by the moon that looked so close it seemed to Colt that he could just reach out and touch it. Colt was irritated with the stress he had been put through, but his irritation with Samson was quickly swept away by a wave of excitement that was flowing into him, emanating from the wolf. He walked up the rise, and as he was about to put his hand on the wolf's back, Samson suddenly leaned his head back and let loose a long howl. "What is it with wolves and the full moon?" Colt thought, feeling his excitement spike. "We came all the way out here so you could howl at the moon? You gotta be kidding me." The wolf howled louder, and the eerie sound reverberated off the mountainsides around them. Colt felt his head being inexplicably forced to the left, and noticed that Samson was staring in that direction as well. Colt tried to force his head forward, but couldn't. He and the wolf stared involuntarily off into the moonlit night. Samson howled again. The force of the howl knocked the snow off of nearby branches and made Colt's ears ring. Far off in the distance a blue light shone brightly and was growing steadily. Without conscious thought, both he and the wolf started to run directly towards it. Colt felt a brief moment of astonishment in the back of his mind at the speed at which they were moving. With each passing second they got closer and closer to the light. It seemed as if they should be on top of it any moment, until it suddenly started to fade and then disappeared. "This crazy wolf has got me chasing lights now. Wonder what it was." Colt and Samson slowed their run and began walking steadily in the direction they had last seen the light. Samson suddenly moved ahead of him. His fur was standing on end and a low growl was coming from his throat as he focused on something ahead of him. "What is it, pal?" Colt asked the wolf quietly. The wolf crouched as though preparing to spring forward. Then Colt finally saw what he was looking at. Nearly 60 yards away, a tall, slender man, dressed entirely in black, was holding a much larger man up off the ground with one hand. Colt felt a shiver flow through his spine, and the tiny hairs on the back of his neck rose when he saw him. As Colt watched, the man pinned his victim against a tree, his feet dangling helplessly nearly a foot off the ground. The bigger man tried to fight back, swinging violently at the other man's unprotected face with his fist. The darkly dressed man didn't even flinch as he was struck repeatedly. An evil laugh floated through the forest as the man laughed at his victim's futile attempts to defend himself. Colt watched the scene in amazement. How can that not hurt? He's got to be on drugs. This is insane. Nobody is that strong. I've got to do something. His mind reeled as he moved forward hesitantly, feeling both excited and afraid. Samson's emotion feeding into Colt was overwhelming, and the conflicting emotions made it hard for him to focus. He fought to clear his head. I've got to at least try to help him. He started to run towards the two men and then stopped, disgusted with what he was seeing. The slender man slammed his victim's head against the trunk of the tree and knocked him unconscious. Then he bit into his neck and started drinking the blood that began to flow from the wound. "No way! It's a vampire," he thought, frozen with fear and indecision. He heard Samson roar ferociously behind him, and the vampire immediately stopped feeding. The beast clutched his hands tightly to his head, writhing his pain as his victim fell to the forest floor. Colt watched as the bright blue light that he and the wolf had followed through the forest began to emanate from within the vampire. Samson's roar faded to a light growl, and the vampire released his head, snarling hatefully at the huge wolf. He backed slowly away from the fallen man on the ground and looked on the verge of running off into the darkness when the wolf's fierce roar froze him again. The blue light swelled inside of him, and he bent over in pain, sending out his own howl of agony as he gripped his head with his hands. Samson bounded forward, reaching the dark man just as the vampire's pain faded, and he was once again released from the magic of the wolf's roar. Samson's roar somehow hurts him. The light looks like it is swelling in his head, Colt thought as he tried to figure out what he was seeing. The evil creature quickly lashed out a hand towards the wolf. Samson caught the blow in his strong jaws and spun, launching the vampire into the air with a flick of his massive head. The vampire twisted in midair and landed gracefully on his feet. Without slowing, he began running directly at Colt, the handsome and deadly man's face filled with anger and hate. Glowing red eyes filled Colt's vision and stifled his mind as the vampire covered the distance between them in the blink of an eye. The vampire stretched out a pale arm splattered in blood towards Colt, reaching for his neck. Colt felt a fierce rage overtake him, clearing his mind as he quickly evaded the vampire's attack and struck him solidly in the chest, launching the creature 20 feet into the waiting jaws of his companion. Colt stared down at his hands. "How did I do that?" he thought in disbelief. The massive jaws clamped tightly around the vampire's body. As he struggled to break free, Samson slammed him solidly into the ground. When he hit the ground, Samson pinned him by placing his huge paws on the vampire's shoulders and quickly tore the creature's head from his body. As the vampire's head fell free, Samson leaned his head back again, and his howl filled the night sky. Colt was confused as the light that was inside the vampire's body rose free and dissipated into the evening sky. As the light faded, they were interrupted by a low moan coming from where the larger man had fallen. Colt ran over to the man who was writhing in pain and looked in horror at the blood flowing from the wound in the side of his neck. "I don't think he's going to make it, pal," he said, looking back at the wolf. Samson stalked slowly towards the man. A low growl rumbled through him. "Calm down, Samson. The bad guy is dead. You took care of him." Colt glanced back down to the man at his feet, and his mouth dropped open as he watched the wound slowly start to heal itself right before his eyes. "No way," Colt breathed. "How?" He shook his head, confused. Samson dropped down into an aggressive stance and lunged at the man with a snarl. Colt hastily jumped in front of him and blocked Samson from getting to the downed man. "Calm down," he said calmly to the snarling animal. Colt kept himself in front of the fallen man as the agitated wolf circled around, trying to get past him, his eyes trained on his target. Without warning, a shadowy figure detached itself from a tree above Colt and dropped soundlessly next to the fallen man. Moonlight glinted on muted steel as the sword rose and fell, and the fallen man's head was removed with precision. Samson relaxed. Colt looked back and quickly prepared to defend himself as the shadowy figure lowered the mask that covered his hidden face. An old man of Asian descent looked back at him. Colt could tell that he was old, but his eyes were still sharp, and his movements graceful as he cleaned his sword on the fallen man's shirt, then sheathed it. "No! Murderer!" Colt shouted as he moved towards the old man, angry at what he just witnessed. "Calm down, son," the old man said in a low, controlled voice. "No! You just killed an innocent man. He was the victim." "I understand you are upset, but it had to be done. Why? Why would you have to kill him? He was innocent." Colt moved closer. The old man stepped back. "Yes, son, he was. But once the beast bit him, the man ceased to exist. In a few moments the transformation would have been complete, and we would have had to kill him anyway. The thirst would have overcome him, and he would have tried to kill you. It was the only way." Colt relaxed his aggressive posture a bit, but now stood defensively. "How do you know that?" Colt asked, backing a little way from the small man in black. His mind was reeling. "Vampires are real?" "Oh no, I just helped to kill somebody or something, but I was just protecting myself. That's self-defense. Some kind of ninja man just chopped a guy's head off with a sword, too. It can't get much worse. I'm in so much trouble." It seemed like a bad dream come to life. "I've seen people turn many times before," the old man said quietly. "So you are telling me that all the things you see on television are true? A vampire bites you, and you become one?" "Yes. If they bite and the person they bit survives, then they will turn. That part is true. But some of the things that you've probably heard about are just myths. Vampires, wolves, ninjas, and murder. This is a nightmare." Colt covered his head with his hand. "I'm so going to jail." The old man laughed. "It's not that bad," he said, trying to comfort him. Colt calmed his mind and asked, "How do you know so much about vampires?" "Well, we can discuss that later, but first things first. My name is Akio Kobayashi, and you are?" "My name is Colt Connors, and this is my friend, Samson," he said, pointing at his companion. "It's nice to meet you," he said, bowing politely in their direction. "You are an interesting pair, aren't you?" I guess so," Colt said, wondering if he should have used his real name. "What are you doing way out here anyway?" he asked suspiciously. "We were tracking your vampire friend, and were about to attack when your wolf showed up and took care of him for us. Impressive, I must say. He knew just how to kill him." "Huh?" Colt looked puzzled. "What do you mean?" "I've studied vampires for years, and the only way that I've found to kill a vampire is by completely removing its head." "That's weird," Colt said, thinking about how Samson had always attacked the head of everything they hunted. "Good thing Samson came along, then. Anything else you do to them doesn't seem to affect them, and if you do ever manage to hurt one, they heal at an amazing rate. They can even regenerate their lost body parts." "Wow, so it just grows right back?" "Yes," Accio answered, "and it does it very quickly." "Well, what about wooden stakes or crosses?" "Excuse me?" "You know, aren't those supposed to kill vampires? And holy water?" "Those are just myths," Accio answered with a smile. "Only a few people know the true nature of the vampire." "Oh, well, I thought it was all fake until a few minutes ago." "Young man," the old man said seriously, "why are you out here?" "It's kind of a long story," Colt said slowly, feeling nervous again. "A while ago you said we were tracking a vampire," he said hastily, trying to change the subject. "Yes," the old man said with a small smile, as though he knew what Colt was trying to do. "But you are all alone." "No, some of my students are here." "Where are they?" he said, looking around at the empty forest surrounding him. "Two of my more advanced pupils are hiding in the shadows of the forest, and the other two are back at our camp." Colt looked around, peering at every shadow, and saw nothing. "So you are some kind of teacher?" Laughing, Accio said, "Yes, some kind. It's obvious you have many questions. I would like to talk to you some more as well, but it is late, and you have been through a lot. Would you be willing to meet with me tomorrow?" Colt felt that he should probably tell him no, but he couldn't make himself do it. He was shaken over what he had seen that night and was curious about the strange old man and his crew. "Okay," he said hesitantly. "Sounds good. Do you know where the lake is?" "Yes, I've been there before." "I wonder if they've ever stayed there," Colt thought. "I assume you must be staying at the cabin there," the old man continued. "Yes, sir, for a while now," Colt answered. "Excellent. My students and I will come tomorrow morning for a visit." "Great," Colt said, forgetting his nervousness and his excitement at having some company. "It was nice meeting you, sir." "It was nice to meet you also, young man," Accio said, bowing once again. "Thank you for your help." Colt turned to leave and stopped suddenly as he realized that both of the slain bodies were gone. He looked back to where Accio had been only a second before and said, "The bodies are gone." But Accio was no longer there, almost as if he was another of Colt's visions. Then the old man's voice rang out from the trees. "When you kill a vampire, they turn to dust. It's one of nature's little cleanup crews." Ha! The old man's laughter slowly faded away until the forest was once again still and quiet. "That was cool," Colt said as he tried to locate where Accio's voice was coming from. "I wonder if he would teach me how to do that." Then Colt pointed at his companion and said firmly, "You had better not run off without me again. We're a team." Samson came up to him submissively. It was as if he understood what he was saying. Together they walked toward the cabin through the moon-drenched forest, with his hand resting lovingly on the wolf's back. Colt was eager for morning to come. Hopefully he would learn a little more about the mysterious stranger named Accio.